Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. So for all you Audie fans, my little bad boy is sitting in the room with me. He is curled up on his second favorite chair, sleeping. Now, his first favorite chair, the absolute favorite, is the one behind me. But he stopped really favoring that chair when I made a few adjustments in the layout of the room, and he could no longer stare at my face. That's very important. He has to be able to pick up his head and look me in the eye. I don't know. Maybe he thinks I'm up to something. So I brought in two other chairs. They're identical. And he chose one of the two to be his second favorite chair. The other one is his third favorite chair. I have a fourth chair in this room, and that is his fourth favorite. But I was just about to look for him, and here he is. Do you want to say hi? Do you want to say hi? All right. Yeah. I was not expecting this. He has been shunning the videos lately. He doesn't like the changes in the weather, but the weather has settled down. So he's moved out of the bedroom to come back in here with me because either he thinks it's not my fault anymore, which I doubt, or he's decided that icing me out is not encouraging me to change the weather for him. That's more likely. So, yeah, he's been spending a little more time with me in the daytime. Now, he spends a lot of time with me at night because he sleeps like right on top of me. And he will jostle me around until I move into the perfect position for him to snuggle up exactly the way he wants to. But even when he curls up in bed, he's still got to be able to make eye contact with me. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. But he does seem to be doing a little better now that the weather isn't so skitsy, because it really was. We were going from freezing to high 80s, back to freezing again. And I get it. I don't understand it, and I'm a grown adult, and he's just a little cat. So I don't think he liked it very much, but he does seem to be coping a little better. And of course, we got the Audie time to prove it. All right, we're going to take a quick break for the intro, and we will be right back. So I brought my bad boy into the kitchen, gave him some food, put some treats on it. He filled his little kitty belly, and because he's a cat, obviously when the little belly was full, back up on the chair, curled up in the soft blanket, and he's probably going to check out for a while now. Little food coma for him. So he may show up, he may not, but he's right here as you have seen. So I thought we would just pick up with our current series of discussions on food shopping, how to reduce prices, how to stay on target. Now, at this point, going into the weekend, I am right on target. I think like $3 over where I should be at this point, and I'm 2.5 weeks into it. I'm not worried about that. I consider $3 a reasonable fudge factor in this, because grocery shopping is not something that is determined by the day. You go out shopping, you buy things on sale, you buy enough food to last you for a few days. So it's not like I go out every day and buy the food I am eating that day only. So again, $3 off, yeah, I'm doing fine. It makes me feel confident that I will make my target this month. Fingers crossed still. And then I thought about what are the things we can do to make cuts in our grocery budget a little more palatable, a little less painful. And I realized that if we have to just give things up willy-nilly, that's not going to work. That never does. You end up feeling deprived and resentful, and first chance you get, any little excuse, oh, my favorite television show just got canceled, I'm going to go off on a shopping spree. That's really the way it works for most of us. So I thought, let's try to find ways to make this a little less painful. And I started looking at substitutions. And I started with potatoes. And the reason I started with potatoes is, well, I like potatoes, but potatoes are probably one of the pricier starches you can put on your plate. So, all of my baby boomer friends are going to recognize this because this is just how we were raised. That standard American plate had a hunk of meat or chicken or fish or pork, whatever, a hunk of protein on the plate. There was a pile of starch, whatever that might be, and in this case we're talking about potatoes, and then there was a little heap of vegetables. And that was what we considered a balanced meal. And we were not wrong to do that because we were being told by nutritionists that this was a balanced meal. This is how we were looking at it. So most of us grew up on that sort of middle America bland, meat, starch, veggie on the plate diet. And it can be very hard to break those habits. Very hard. So I figured let's start tackling a few of them, but not by pulling anything off our plate and leaving an empty space behind. So can we pull things off our plate, fill it up with something else that is probably going to do the same job for us, but at a more affordable cost? And the answer is yes. So, did a little research, found out that the average price of a standard potato, and this is very hard to narrow down, but I was able to get a working figure. And the reason it's hard to narrow down is what is an average potato? There are so many varieties, and the country has such diverse economic conditions that, in the end, this may not be the price you are paying for potatoes. It's not the price I am paying. In the end, I found that the average potato in the United States is selling for about 85 cents a pound. Now, a pound of potatoes, you can get one giant potato that will equal a pound. A pound of potatoes is usually more along the lines of 2 good-sized potatoes. Not too big, not too small. And that was the formula I always used in the past for meal planning. A goodly potato, if I were going to serve a baked potato, for example. The potato needs to be big enough to be, shown off on the plate in all its baked glory. That would be approximately half a pound. So that's the figure I am working with, that 1/2 pound of potatoes is a serving. So let's take a look at what we can do to replace that potato. Now, remember, the cost of a pound of potatoes is 85 cents. But let's take a look at pasta instead. You see, for about $1, and this is right across the board, it doesn't have the same, farm vagaries as a potato, because even though I am in a farming area, this is not a big potato growing area, and as I've told you before, I was paying $1.49 a pound. In fact, I'm pretty sure I took a picture to show you. So, in my area, no. If I went off into, the Northeast, I understand they produce a lot of potatoes there. Maybe it would be different. But here, yeah, way off. So, nevertheless, we are taking that 85 cents a pound, and that's what we're comparing it to. So, you can go out anywhere and get a box of pasta. You can get macaroni, you can get shells, you can get spaghetti, you can get fusible, whatever you want for about $1 a pound. And now that is getting the store brands or the less expensive brands. It's not getting the pricey imported pasta. It's just the regular old macaroni you would pull off the shelf. But it's not things like crafted, prepared macaroni and cheese dinner or mixes or whatever. It's just straight up pasta. Now that box of pasta, whether it's spaghetti, whether it's shells, whether it's macaroni, is going to yield 8 servings. And I would consider these to be slightly smaller servings than maybe we are used to seeing these days. But still, it's a good working figure. Now, remember the potato, 85 cents a pound. Well, you get 2 servings out of that pound of potatoes at 85 cents. If we add an additional third of a serving, we're up to like $1. So that's your comparison point. 2 1/3 servings of potatoes against 8 servings of pasta for the same money. Pasta is a better choice. Now, I'm not saying get rid of your potatoes and never look at a potato again, but I am saying you can easily replace that one starch with a less expensive starch. You don't have to do it every day. If your family is a meat and potatoes every day, pull it out. Switch it for pasta 1 or 2 days a week. The savings will still be there. And pasta is very versatile. As I said there, I couldn't even count the number of various pastas I see at my own grocery store. And I am not even in a predominantly Italian part of the country. You go to an Italian part of the country, and believe me, I know, I used to live in Italian parts of the country, and you will see things you can't even pronounce on those shelves, because Italian Americans are very, very fond of their pasta. And the thing is, with good reason, because it is low cost, it is very versatile, it is extremely easy to prepare. With a potato, you're going to have to, at minimum, scrub it up and dice it and throw it into the pot of boiling water. But with the pasta, boiling water, box, pour, walk away, come back, it's done. So that is an easy substitution. Another easy substitution for potatoes, because you're still going to have a white thing on your plate. Remember, that's what we're dealing with. We must have that white thing there. Is rice. And rice, interestingly enough, was for decades, it was a staple of Southern cooking. I don't know if it still is. So our Southern viewers, are you still doing rice and gravy? Is that still on your plates? Because certainly, especially on the East Coast, where rice was actually being produced, and to this day still is, rice was very much a staple in a Southern diet. Again, rice, very versatile. You can do almost anything with rice that you could do with a potato, besides, like bake it and throw chili on it. Well, I suppose you could do that. Fact is, rice is even less expensive than pasta. And if you are used to having that potato on your plate day in, day out, just take it off 1 day a week. Throw on some pasta. You can put a sauce on the pasta. You can sprinkle some cheese on it. Whatever floats your boat. No end of variations. Same thing with the rice. Take another day. Take the potato off. Throw down some rice. And as I said, rice is far less expensive even than pasta, especially white rice if you buy it in large bags. Now let me throw the sort of caveat in here. White rice, not so pricey, very sort of low end on the grocery scale. But wild rice, and that, by the way, is not even really rice. It's a bunch of grass grains. And wild rice is much more expensive. Funny thing is, wild rice used to be relatively inexpensive. Not anymore. I imagine that urban yuppies just got their hands on it, and that's what happened to it. So those are a couple of options for swapping. So let's look at some others, because I have plenty of these little swaps for you. You can swap out on your plate your chicken breasts for chicken thighs. You got the same meat there, it's still chicken. Most people say that, I'm not a big chicken eater, so I'm not in a position to judge this. Most people say that the thigh meat is more flavorful than the breast meat anyway. So the thigh meat is considerably less expensive, and it's still chicken. For the most part, you can prepare the breast meat and thigh meat in very much the same way, but you're still going to have chicken on your plate. So I would have to say that is one of the easiest substitutions, because the price difference in some cases is $2 or $3 a pound. I mean, seriously. So again, super easy. This one requires no great explanation because it's simply chicken for chicken. You're just substituting a less expensive cut that most people claim is much tastier anyway. Wow, talk about a serious win. Another one I wanted to throw out to you is substituting pork for beef. And I did that this week, which may be part of the reason that I went a few dollars over on this week's budget. I went out, and because of the time of year, I was able to get a pork shoulder roast. They call it a picnic roast. Picnic roast, picnic shoulder, something like that. People, for some reason, associate this with summer in their minds. So these cuts can be hard to find in the winter. And that happens to be a particular cut of pork that I like. And I'm not a big meat eater to begin with. But the truth is, I really believe I like pork more than beef anyway. But the thing with that picnic roast is you just stick it in a crock pot, set the timer, walk away, come back in 4 hours, and it's just melting in your mouth. It really is something that is designed for this crock pot cooking. So that, by the way, the cost of that was $13 and change. I didn't make a note of the exact amount. It was $13 and change. I am going to easily get a week's worth of meals out of that. And that is something you can substitute for beef. If you cook your beef in a crock pot, in a slow cooker, you can throw the pork in, do the same thing, no big deal, turn around, walk away, 4 hours later, it's done. So that is not quite the same clean substitution that chicken thighs for chicken breasts would be. But still, you're still going to get the meat on your plate. It's still going to be a roast. It's still going to have the same general appearance. And there you go. It's just going to be an absolute fraction of the cost. That $13 pork roast, gosh, it had to be at least 4 or 5 pounds. It was significant. Given the fact that my recollection is the cost on that was around $2 a pound. I got it because it was on sale. It was around $2 a pound, and the beef I have priced recently for roasting is upwards of $7 a pound. $7 is sort of base level for the kind of meat you could roast. So I would have to say, yeah, something like this, you are going to save a lot of money. And of course, if you're cooking for a family, there are going to be plenty of leftovers too. They reheat quickly and easily. So that is another sort of massive savings you can come up with just from that simple substitution. So next up, and this one came from one of our viewers who was trying to help me deal with my waste in fresh produce. And she had said, start buying frozen berries. Frozen fruit, go buy it, stick it in the freezer, take out what you want, thaw it out. And frankly, frozen berries thaw in a few minutes. So I started doing that. And now I'm going to share this with you. Because of the high prices of produce lately, it's interesting that although I'm not going to tell you frozen vegetables are a great bargain, because they have definitely gone up in price a lot, not as much as fresh produce. So that is a quick and easy substitution if you're looking to just extend your grocery budget and still have the general flavor of fresh produce. I find frozen produce to be much closer to fresh than canned produce. However, we're going to pick up on canned in a minute. It will save money. And depending on the part of the country you're in, it could save you serious money. I know some of you are in areas where you have a lot of reasonably priced farmers markets. Basically, you have the farmers markets that haven't yet been discovered by the yuppies, because once that happens, boy, their prices will go up too. If you have farmers markets and you can buy fresh produce for less, go ahead and do it. You know, I envy you, but for those of us who don't have that option, frozen is probably going to save money. What you have to do is you have to be mindful that you want to get the vegetables, not the fancy vegetables and the fluffy little sauces and whatever, because then you're paying for the sauces, the price is going up, you're getting less vegetable and more, prepackaged junk. So I'm not going to throw that out to you as something I think is a good idea. So I was just talking about canned goods too. And that is another way in which you can save some serious money. Canned vegetables can easily go into soups or stews. You can throw them in with a roast. I wouldn't throw them in at the beginning. I'd throw them in at the very end because they've been pre-cooked. They do not need that extra time in the oven. But canned vegetables are even less expensive than frozen. I have never been a big fan of canned vegetables, but there are some kinds of canned vegetables I will buy. For example, tomatoes. If I want to make a spaghetti sauce, I am generally not going to the store and buying fresh tomatoes, largely because the plum tomatoes you need for a spaghetti sauce are hard to come by, and frankly, they're just as expensive as the regular slicing tomatoes. But the diced tomatoes, or, the sort of canned, peeled, boiled potatoes, those are great for a sauce. And so I will make an exception for canned tomatoes. There are plenty of other things that you can buy dried instead of fresh that will save you money. And I do want to throw out herbs. because some of these, oregano, sage, thyme, rosemary, marjoram, bay leaves, and I'm forgetting something. Those are all better dry than fresh. They become more fragrant, more flavorful, and getting them dried will save you a lot of money, because when you buy them fresh, you have to buy them in season. They have to be trucked in, usually locally, and the price goes up because there's so much more handling involved in this. So anyway, those were, what did I have? I think I had 5 different categories of things that you can do without taking something off your plate and leaving an empty space. Things that you can do to keep the same general stuff on your plate and in your diet, just finding ways to cut the costs a little. Now, keep in mind, these suggestions are not going to work for everyone. People have different tastes. Some people might love potatoes and will not consider macaroni with a little cheese on it to be a decent substitute. Other people might say, well, yeah, the pasta only costs, a few cents, but what about all the sauce I'm putting on it? And basically, that's where that can of tomatoes comes in, because if you make your own sauce, it is very, very inexpensive, certainly compared to things like ragu. You get that jar in the grocery store, and the contents of that jar are like maybe, 60 cents if you took it off the grocery store shelves yourself and brought it home. But that jar is going to be $2 or $3. And yes, if you are supplementing your substitutions with fancier sauces and things like that, sure, it is going to be more expensive. But you don't need to do that. You absolutely do not need to do that. You can eat pasta just tossed with olive oil. You can eat rice with butter on it. Asian people eat plain white rice out of the bowl all the time. And gosh, I'm trying to remember what it was my brother used to say. Something about 6 million Chinese can't be wrong. And the fact is that people are doing this. They enjoy it. May not be your cup of tea. But again, throwing this out, we all have different tastes. And maybe you can take some of these ideas, even if they wouldn't work for you in particular, and use them as springboards to come up with your own. And we were talking about canned and dried foods as alternatives to fresh. But I'm also thinking things like make your own stock or bouillon. A bouillon cube is this big and relatively cheap, as opposed to going into the store and getting one of those cartons of pre-made chicken stock or beef soup stock. There are many ways to do it. I am just beginning to scratch the surface here, because I'm looking at ways to save money on my grocery budget. So I'm starting to get creative. And as I started off this video by saying, I like potatoes. I really do. But am I going to be eating as many potatoes going forward? No, I'm not. I am going to be throwing out some rice or some pasta, something else, instead of the potatoes. Because the truth is, they're getting priced out of my budget. And I know, 85 cents a pound, this should not be priced out of my budget. But the fact is that it all adds up. And if I have a dollar target I need to meet at the end of the month, then I'm going to cut that cost wherever I can. And this is one way to do it. So that is what I have for you today. Hopefully, some of these ideas would have been valuable to you. And if not, then I'm hoping at least they will serve as springboards for your own ideas. And as always, you have a better idea, please share it in the comments, because we are all facing these increased costs. And the more research I do, the more convinced I become that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, because my research has shown me massive escalations in prices lately, and the trajectory is still going up. So it's a good idea to get a handle on it while we can, while it's still relatively easy, and before we end up going into the store saying, I don't know why I'm here, because I can't afford dinner. All right, we are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. Thank you all for being with us. We did get a little bit of Audie time. I'm hoping to see you all again tomorrow. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.